So we were sitting on the couch one night, and he said, dude, one day we're going to start our own business. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to do it. And so it's been in the works without us really knowing.
We always wanted something. We found it with this.
Right. And what's cool is, they say don't get into business with family. And I don't really consider Chad family yet. So
Good point.
So it still works, yeah.
You just heard Chad Horton and Caleb Bolton. Chad Horton was born and raised in Bakersfield, California, attended Centennial High School, and graduated in 2003. After high school, Chad went to the Airforce, and he was stationed in Germany and served 2 tours supporting the Operation Iraq Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. During this time, Chad met his wife, Brittney, who is also from Bakersfield. Prior to HB Epoxy, Chad had 15 years in oil and gas industry fulfillment positions in operations and sales management. Caleb Bolton, born into a life of painting. It was only a matter of time before it would become a business. His dad was a contractor, older brother is a contractor, and after years of fighting it, now Caleb is too. Painting houses has always been a great skill to have on the side, but Caleb never wanted to do it full time. That all changed after his first garage floor. Epoxy coating became a route Caleb took into the painting world due to the love of the process, the product, and the results. In today's show, we discuss why a business doing epoxy floors made sense. Later in the show, we talked about why Chad and Caleb are great business partners. And be sure to stay tuned for the rapid fire answers from the guest.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
Hey, podcast listeners, welcome to the show. This is Troy Burton. I'm your co-host of Our 2 Cents today. Got a couple great guests as a lineup, a couple friends here that really want to get into some great entrepreneurship and partnership. But before we talk to these gentlemen, I want to encourage everyone to go back and listen to last week's show with Zach Scow. He's the founder of Marley's Mutts up in Tehachapi. Zach's a dear friend of the show, second time appearance, if you will. He has a dog rescue and does a ton of things with positive change for incarcerated people. Gives a lot of people hope and works with a lot of people with addiction as well. Check that out. And also, our webpage, our2cents.com, is how you can communicate with us. We'd love to have you on the show. If you think you got something you want to share, we'd love to hear from you. So we look forward to that. Well, Chad Horton and Caleb Bolton.
Yes, sir.
We're going to call you guys HB Epoxy.
That's right. That's right. And you nailed it a little earlier. The H is for Horton, the B is for Bolton.
It was a guess, but I just got lucky,
Beach.
That's right.
I'm a Taft High graduate, and I put the two together, and
There we go.
I think that's what that
There
means.
you go. I think that was on your guys' final probably out there.
It probably was. So, guys, before we get into your business venture, I know that you met with Kyle, the attorney here, and that's kind of how I ended up. I've known Caleb for a few years, but it's kind of how this kind of spun out into a podcast today. But before we do that, let me just break it down on a very layman term. Why epoxy?
Why not?
Well, I'll tell you. I'll answer that real quick. So I was born with a paintbrush in my hand, been painting all my life, houses, interior, exterior. Love it. It's always a great way to stay busy, make a little extra cash. I didn't want to do it full time. I wanted to do something a little more creative, something a little cooler, I guess you could say. And after the first epoxy garage floor that I did, I remember talking to Chad, and this was 5 years ago. It was, probably about 4 or 5 years. I said, dude, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. We got to do this at some point. We got to check, you got to check this out. So here we are, 4 or 5 years later, we do his garage, and he says, dude, we're doing this. And he pulls the trigger, and he meets with Kyle and calls me, hey, dude, we're incorporated, like the next day. So he had to see it done and do it and help, and he was hooked. And
So you were a side job kind of guy.
I was a side job guy, right?
And you did painting houses, and it's kind of a vanilla, I paint houses.
Yeah, all throughout high school, during the summers, I worked for a local contractor. And then a couple years after that, going through BC, I worked for him as well full time, and then got into other stuff. And my dad always said, you're always going to paint something no matter what you do, no matter where you're working. And he was right. So here we go.
So you felt, or it is, this epoxy business is more of a high-end finish,
Definitely.
A little more than just I painted your house white.
Exactly. Yeah, the garage floors, the protection it does, and
it's
and
the man's
finish.
kitchen, right?
It is, and it's a garage. I mean, what guy doesn't want their garage to look like the best room in the house?
It's the man cave.
No, I completely get it, and I've seen some great work
Right.
done. And so you did one and kind of fell in love and go, this is kind of where I want to go.
Oh, yeah.
At what point did you and Chad get together? I know you have some relations.
Yeah, Chad
some connections, but did this happen over drinks on Friday night 3 months ago? Or has this been talking about for 6 years?
This is kind of a span quite a while, right? So I have a history in oil, and I've enjoyed that career.
We all have a history in oil.
If you're from Kern County,
That's true.
You've touched it.
We're all still in oil too.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly. And he had done a few of my friends, my dad, a lot of other family members. And I remember he came to do my garage, and I asked him, I said, hey, between doing epoxy flooring and painting, what do you love? And he's like, he said it in one simple phrase. He's like, I paint, I don't mind painting, but I love doing epoxy flooring. And that's when it kind of hit me that we had talked about doing this for a while, that it was like, dude, if you love it this much and I can get behind the work that you're doing, there might be some binary value if we went into business, because it's like I have the back end and I can help build a pipeline, and you're sitting here doing something that you absolutely love. And that's where I was like, we got to do it.
Does that mean he doesn't know how to do the job?
He does know how to do it. He's done
now.
so since then. He's done a few with me, quite a few actually. And but before all of that, so how long has it been since you brainwashed my sister into marrying you?
15 years this year. Yeah.
So
bless her heart.
Yeah, I know. So 15 years ago, shortly after that, we started just talking about businesses. Oh yeah, we want to have our own business one day. And he said, I don't know when this was, but he had mentioned, it was when I lived with him. And that was 10 years ago.
Oh, at least.
Yeah. So we were sitting on the couch one night, and he said, dude, one day we're going to start our own business. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's been in the works without us really knowing.
We always wanted something, and we found it with this.
Right. And what's cool is, they say don't get into business with family. And I don't really consider Chad family yet. So,
Good point.
So it still works. Yeah.
Was there a trigger? Did something happen? Did someone get laid off? Did the oil industry crash? What made you guys say today's the day? Let's do the leap.
So I had worked for my prior employer. I started out in Long Beach. I was there for about a decade, and we were growing. We grew globally. We wanted to grow more in California. I head out to Bakersfield, and we wanted to grow a district, so they sent me out here to start up a district with the promise that I can come back in 2 years. So I rented out my house. I rented a house here. I said, hey, babe, it's just going to be a 2-year stint. We're going to come back. Through that time period, the company went public, and they said, hey, the transfer back's off the table. So I don't like to say I was stuck here because I'm from here, and my friends and family are here, so it was great. We started having kids. It was an awesome place to raise a family, and after working for that company for a period of time, the owner left. I said I wanted to go work for a bigger company. I wanted to go get the experience of a big,
Fortune 500.
Yeah. And and it was always a 2 to 3 year deal. So after 3.5 years, I was like, hey, it's time to kind of look at something different now. And I started interviewing with, I kind of wanted to go back to the more privately held company, and I'm interviewing with people and I'm talking to people. And I just felt like at some point, I've built so many different regions through my career. At what point do I just put that investment back into myself?
Good point.
And then it comes into like, well, what do you do? Well, in my case, it's all oil. So do I put that investment back to myself and I just go fully oil? Or do I branch outside? And then it was literally, I think when we were doing our garage, I was looking at Caleb. He's teaching me how to do everything. I'm seeing how he's just a perfectionist and a master at what he does. And I'm like, if you love this much and you're this good at it, then let's just do it. And I've always been a sink or swim guy. So I was just like, I told my wife, I think a week and a half later, I said, hey, I'm quitting my job today. Like as I'm walking out the door, and she was like, no, you're not. And I was like, no, I am. Like Cabe and I are going to go into business, and we're going to start this epoxy business. And she's like, whoa, come back. And I'm
Hold on.
And then I get a phone call from her. You're not doing this.
Yeah, stop him.
Yeah.
And it was literally 30 minutes later, I called my wife first, and I was like, hey, I just did it. I'll call you right back. I called Caleb, and I was like, hey, I just quit my job. We're in business.
Yeah.
And
and I got to give Chad credit because I've been wanting to start a business doing this for about 2 years now. I just was never the business guy. I'll work and I'll do whatever I got to do, but I just didn't have
it takes a lot.
It took him, taking the initiative and saying, dude, we're doing it. There's no going back.
It's hard to be a one-man band. Trust me.
It is.
Absolutely.
Right.
You need to, I always said, staff your weaknesses, whatever that means.
And that's how this thing is working out so well, because he's the business guy. I got the product down, and it's a great working relationship.
Well, let's go a little bit into the product.
Okay.
So there's a lot of garages in the world.
Yep.
A lot of backyards. I know you do decks and
patios, tabletops, countertops, walls.
So why would I put epoxy on rather than paint? I wouldn't paint concrete anyway. Not that maybe I would. I don't really know why.
Right.
But
yeah.
Let's talk about it. Besides, I know I have friends that have show cars.
Right.
And they got epoxy floors, and you can eat off of them.
Of course, right.
They're cleaner than their houses. And
right.
It's like, wow, this is a showroom.
And what you just said is exactly why epoxy is different than paint. It's a lot harder. It dries a lot smoother. And paint, if you spill oil or, think about the stuff you have in your garage. Your car's leaking, the hot tires. Paint isn't built for that, so the epoxy, that's what it's made for. The protection, chemical resistant, non-slip, so all the reasons why you want to protect your concrete is with epoxy.
So I know guys dig it because it's the man cave.
And it looks cool.
We talked about that. And every guy wants a really cool man cave. Right. Is there a big demand? Are you getting a lot of calls? People saying, hey, I want that. What's it cost?
There's actually a really, really big demand here. I think it's getting really popular right now. And when people hear the pricing, it's not as expensive as you would think. When you consider how long it lasts, our product that we use, we guarantee a lifetime warranty. This stuff will never peel up. It'll never bubble, no matter what. So lifetime warranty.
It'll even fit my budget?
It'll fit your budget.
Absolutely.
You could probably do two. Hey, you could probably do 2 garages.
Could I get a discount?
Budget. Definitely, of course. Of course, yeah. We'll give them a few cents off.
That's fair.
Yeah, definitely.
How long does it take to do a typical 2-car garage?
About 10 hours. And most of that is dry time. We're 1 day.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And like you
depending
said,
on the size
time, certain dry times between the layering that we have to do with the epoxy, the flake, and the clear coat. So
temperature make a difference?
Huge difference.
Absolutely.
And we found that out on a couple jobs during this past, when it got really cold a few months ago and foggy. Temperature does play a part, not too much in the top clear coat that we could apply and shoot 0-degree weather, and it's going to dry the same no matter what. But the epoxy does have a temperature gauge where it will take a little longer if it's colder.
I imagine prep is probably...
It's everything.
Everything.
Especially
if a guy's neglected his garage.
Exactly.
He's got 3 inches of grease on the floor.
Well, and then, cracks in the concrete, the expansion joints, they spread. So
you polish it, fill the voids.
Yes, sir.
Cracks.
Yeah, the first thing we do, we'll go fill all the cracks, and the product we use for cracks is also an epoxy patch filler or crack filler. So we fill all the cracks, fill all any bird baths, any low spots. And then once that's done, we grind the floor with a big floor grinder. And that's where you make the money right there. That's where you make it happen, is with the grinding. So we'll spend 4 hours just grinding back and forth across the floor until it's all even and smooth. And then putting the epoxy and flaking it takes about...
We did a time lapse on a 6,000 square foot airplane hangar of doing the grinding. And even on a time lapse, it didn't look like we were moving.
No.
It just looked like we were barely walking. It takes forever.
Yeah.
It does. It really does when you're on that grinder. And that's everything.
Oh, I bet that turned out well. I bet you the
everything.
Bigger, the open the space, the real...
Oh, it's so cool.
With the lighting.
Yeah. And we'll have to show you some pictures on that when we did a pickleball court in the middle. It is really, really cool.
Interesting.
Super cool project. Yeah.
If for some reason pickleball comes up a lot these days.
It does, doesn't it? So that's we're also in the sports coating business as well.
Yeah. So sports coatings has actually picked up quite a bit.
Right.
So a lot of been out a lot of high schools lately, a couple colleges, private neighborhoods, people's backyards. They want pickleball courts, tennis courts.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle and I remember at Stockdale, and we still have 10 or 12 tennis courts, but they've took out 2 of them and put in
just the
eight pickleballs.
Yeah.
I guess when you get old, it's easier to do. I haven't played
Everyone could play pickleball. Tennis
They just
tough.
built one in the park across the street. Let's play pickleball. I've never played pickleball.
It is so fun.
So
it's ping pong and tennis.
You're standing on the ping pong table.
And I think you can drink cocktails and play the game.
Oh,
so
definitely.
It's probably right down our alley.
It's right there.
Yeah.
What are you doing after this?
Just go golf.
All right, guys. So tell me this. Back to the startup.
Yes,
How
sir.
long ago did you start?
December.
The company, The company back in December.
Officially, we were official and legit in December.
Is it just you guys? You have employees?
Right now, it's just us.
That's right.
What's your long-term goal?
I mean, conquer the world.
Exactly.
We don't want to the one thing I've learned through business is organic growth tends to be a little bit more difficult, right? So
yes,
growth through acquisition tends to be a little easier. through the epoxy business, the sports coating business, we reached out into the industrial business with the chemical resistant, slip resistant surfacing. We'd like to eventually get to a point to where if somebody called us and said, hey, we want to do 12 tennis courts at a high school, we'd like to be able to say, hey, we can do your track too.
Right.
We can do turf. We can do, anything that's binary in the space that we're in, we would like to eventually try to grow into. But that just comes with time and experience. And
well, you guys are both very smart people, and I'm sure you've seen many people go into business in your life, and some people grow too fast.
Right.
And not maybe cross all the T's and dot the I's. So I know you guys are somewhat related. We'll call it that.
Yep, we'll call it that.
You guys have been brainstorming. I heard you
Right.
said you lived with him 10 years ago.
Yep.
And so you had plenty of time to bond and, and have couch talk and man cave talk. And so the dream came out. You guys pulled the trigger. You quit your job and you did the thing. And what was the first thing you did as a businessman? I mean, did you build a business plan?
I did. So when I put this together, there's one phrase that I have that I've carried through years of being ops manager, district manager, a sales manager, regional sales manager. It's, I've never failed. I just found 10,000 ways it don't work. Famous, Thomas Edison quote that I tend to live by. So anytime I jump into anything, I always say that, like, no matter what happens, like, I will not fail. If I bring it to the table and it doesn't work, that's fine. Yes. You just have to find another way that works for you.
Failures are stepping stones.
Right. So as we started building this, I built the pipeline, and that was kind of, one of the issues we had in the beginning was it was so easy for me to take, the Rolodex of relationships that I had in this town through sales over 15 years and say, hey, is there a need here? Is there a need here? And then, everything tends to kind of filter out in the sense that somebody's like, hey, it's not for me, but I know somebody, or I know somebody. And that's what makes Kern County and Bakersfield so great, is that the relationships in this town, they fuel everything. So for me, when I looked at it, I built this pipeline, and then I got with Caleb and I'm like, dude, we built a business, but we have nothing on the back end. And then you kind of, like, when you build a business and something like this, you go through what, like, I kind of call the honeymoon stage, right? Where you start to, like, work with friends and family first, and you feel like, oh, I've got so much work and opportunity because all your friends and family are like, oh, they're going to give me a deal. I've always thought about doing this. I want to help them.
We'll support them.
We call that the car lot theory where I come from.
Right. So it's that honeymoon stage. And then it's like, as I'm looking at, like, the pipeline, I'm like, oh no, dude, we got to grow this, like, past that. Like, we need to be 2 months past what could cover us for, like, 1 full week.
Right.
You know what I mean? We worked on that. We got with Kyle, we got with a CPA, a financial advisor, and we started going through it all. And we're still actually working on some of this back end stuff with payroll companies. We're doing, we're bidding on municipality work. So we, certified payroll and workers comp and all these other things.
Prevailing wage and all that.
Yeah. It becomes,
all the reporting of it, I should say, right?
Complicated.
The reporting
it does.
Stuff, right? It
absolutely does. And, we started, I'd like to say we started this kind of, on the business back end of unconsciously unaware. Like, we didn't know what we didn't know, right?
Sure.
And I feel like through business, you go through, like, different stages. You're unconsciously unaware. You don't know what you don't know. And then you're consciously unaware. It's like you finally have learned enough to know that, like, hey, I don't know this, but you can go resource it, right?
Right.
And I think in business, as you go through it, like, the end objective, like, what makes you dangerous, not like dangerous to yourself, but just dangerous in the sense of what you're capable of, is being consciously aware. Like, if you don't know it, you know somebody that does know it. You know the resources that can go find it. And we're slowly kind of going through some of those marks where it's like, okay, we didn't know what we didn't know. Like, in terms of, like, laying product and doing that covered, right? Some of the things when people start a business, it's like the application isn't the tough part.
Right.
And everything's in the environment. Like, we work in a state that's heavily regulated.
Yep.
So, like, there's so many.
You can say that again.
Yeah. That's why we get our product from Arizona.
Like, I constantly check the mail, and I'm like, dude, Kyle just sent me my EIN yesterday, and the state 2 days later is already asking for money.
Right, exactly.
Like, they overnighted that to my house. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Those hidden costs that they don't tell you about when you're starting a business, those are everywhere. Every day there's something new where, whoa, hold on a minute.
You know, and I'm really happy to hear your brainstorm, because I've met with so many entrepreneurs that, maybe they're great people that have talent, could build fences, but do not know how to take it to the market, or don't know how to even ask for the business. Right. It doesn't matter how good you are. If no one knows you, you're really not.
Right.
But what I hate to hear is people being an advisor on the insurance side of people that have started business, piecemealed it 2 or 3 years, and then, get in somewhat trouble. The first thing you did is a business plan. Yep. Second thing you did is you met with an attorney and said, hey, we need to incorporate possibly.
Right. What are the best options?
Let's do this thing right on the front end, because if you screw it up and you start in a hole, it's so hard to get it out. And you both know this because we talked a little bit in the lobby before Caleb showed up. Self-employment is wonderful because everyone thinks I want the freedom and all the luxuries that come with it.
Work when I want, if I want.
And now you're learning as a startup, your job never ends.
It's 24/7.
In my business, even though I work for a brokerage firm, I feel like the more I work, the more work I produce.
Yes.
Right.
So it's really interesting of that. But I love what I do, and I can tell that you guys do too.
Absolutely.
And that is the recipe for success. So entrepreneurs, if you find something in your life that you are passionate about, chances are you should seek that opportunity.
Exactly.
But also, as you mentioned, okay, you're great, Caleb, at doing the work, and you've learned it. But this is your passion of laying floor.
It really is.
But you realize that you don't have the expertise that he does.
Exactly.
So you've staffed that component.
Exactly. It works out perfectly because the product, the application, that's covered like Chad said. But for me, the business stuff, the attorneys, the contacts, all that stuff Chad was talking about.
That was like one of the first
me,
jobs. Like we went out and it's like, all right, let's measure this. The way my brain works is like, all right, for this square footage, if they just do a standard epoxy job, right? And we had to go look at like, what's a standard 2-car garage? What's a standard 3-car garage? They all vary a little bit.
Sure.
But there's no stand.
We need to go find out what our cost per square foot is. And then once we establish our cost, we can come out with just a blanket. This is the cost per square foot that we charge, right?
Yep.
And that's always going to be predicated, supply and demand. And as we came out, we try to be very competitive with some of the top dogs, but it's like, well, they're getting called every single day. Like we don't have a reputation. We've been in business 60 days. Nobody knows who we are.
Right.
You know what I mean? So some of these things are, it's like, let's come in competitive. I've done a lot of work on trying to find out where the competition is. It's not just where the competition is in pricing. It's talking to people that have gone with somebody else. We've got a lot of friends and family that have used somebody else. What did you like about them? What did you not like about them?
Sure.
What was good? What wasn't bad? And we kind of, once you start to go through that, you take your business plan that you wrote initially,
throw it away,
which and you start crossing things out, and you say, this is what we're going to do. And kind of back to your point, even earlier when we talked about it, was the entrepreneurship of this. I've managed big privately held companies, small private companies, managing operations and sales in big publicly traded companies, and I thought there was going to be a huge binary value. And there still is, but I thought it would translate over to entrepreneurship just seamlessly. And it really isn't, because I've learned that the mind of somebody that manages somebody else's business is completely different from somebody running their own business and that entrepreneur, mindset. And that comes from the fact, like I called him one night and, we're looking at doing big stuff for like Fresno State and all these, where we're floating a ton of overhead. We need a ton of resources. And I said, the business acumen that I carried, needs to be refined a little bit, because, I come from a business where I have an unlimited bank account where I can float, hundreds of thousands of dollars, over a month to buy product for, a job.
Sure.
I have unlimited resources. I can fly people in from the Northeast. I can fly them in from Canada. I mean, if we need people, I can just get them here. Versus our P&L statement today is completely managed different. Like our P&L managing another company is like, you look at what, your profit loss is measured on what's billed that month. Not what's paid. Well, we got fixed costs and we got our own variable costs. We measure it by the day, the hour, the week. Everything's measured completely different. And that's where that unconsciously unaware starts to come into that consciously aware.
When the bills start coming in.
And you're like, all right, dude, so let's look at it this way. This is the work that we're taking on. This is what we aspire to be. But we've had to turn down some pretty big jobs just because we said, hey, we don't want to be hindered out of the gate.
Right.
You know what I mean?
We don't want to
keep the relationships with the people bringing us to the table, and that, we want to do good work for them. We're just a startup.
Well, yeah, and there's an old saying, at least it's my saying, that good news spreads fast, but bad news spreads like wildfire.
Exactly.
So if you do a shabby job because you're not really up to speed and you're just...
Because you're thinking about the next one.
You're not there yet. Quality control is going to be key. But you said it, and Kern County is such a wonderful community, and obviously you guys are great guys and you're going to be well known in the community, but it's word of mouth. I mean, you come do my garage and I got 15 houses it's a double cul-de-sac, and I guarantee you every neighbor I have will be in my garage.
What's the address? Will be.
I promise you. I just put a curb in this last weekend, and I couldn't even get the job done. And Mariah comes out and goes, "What's wrong?" And I'm frustrated. I love my neighbors. It's an awesome neighborhood. Yeah. Most of them are retired. They all want to come talk and chat. What are you doing?
Right.
Well, what are you doing after that? It's like, I mean, they're in my business, which is cool. I mean, it's an awesome neighborhood. But see, that's the word of mouth I'm referring to. And it's kind of like, hey, if you put a diamond out there, and people are going to look at it.
Exactly. And that's what I've been telling Chad. Some of these jobs take a little time to prep them right. When you flake these things, it sounds crazy, but there is, a certain way to throw the flake kind of to make it spread evenly. And there's little things that you don't think about unless you've done it. And I am a perfectionist.
And you learn from others.
You learn from others.
You guys, I'm not telling you any trade secrets here. I just redid my backyard last year. I redid the pool, the Pebble Tech, and so on, and did a lot of other stuff. Right. And I did most of the work, not the Pebble Tech. And I noticed that where I did use contractors, and this is not brainstorm. He sticks a sign in my front yard. He had 3 jobs on my cul-de-sac before he left the neighborhood. Wow. And he worked it 4 days.
Yep.
And it's just like the guys pruning trees. It's like, hey, if you need
mine need to be done.
I'm right down the street. If you need me to, it's like, these are the things you do.
Well, Bakersfield's the greatest referral business town I think I've ever seen. Like, I don't think that we would be in this situation if, we had just moved to some other city somewhere else where we didn't know people, because it doesn't work that way.
And even when I was painting on the side, I would do it for a family member, and then they have a friend, and then they have a friend, and it's just, it spreads just word of mouth. I didn't advertise, it was just, for friends and family. It ended up, being a really cool thing for me for the last few years, on the side, but now it's, this referral business for these things, now this is our livelihood. So
let's not get too much into your competition, but how many people are doing this locally?
I think it started out with one. I don't know if I can say his name or not, and I think
you can, but I already know who it is.
Yeah, I love the guy.
I do
worked full time for him. But yeah, I would say there's probably at least 10. But I don't know if there's any that put as much love into it as we do.
Well, so
honestly,
there's a lot more, but there's people that have gotten into like, hey, we do concrete coatings, and now we're expanding this, or we're a painting contractor, and now we're expanding into this. So I feel like it's one of those things where I was like, hey, this is kind of like the new crypto. Like we're getting in at just, a quick enough time. And I know you're a big crypto guy, so I got a lot of questions for you later. But it's one of those things where I'm like, I feel like we're just getting in at the right time in terms of doing something like this. Now, sports coatings, there's really not many at all. And that's what, kind of by dumb luck, we started doing the sports coating just for one specific project. And Caleb was calling around looking for some local material. And it was kind of, the reaction was like, holy smokes, you guys do this in town? Like, there's really not a lot of people that do this. And they put us in touch with a ton of people that have so far hit us up and asked for stuff. So, in that sense, that's been great. And then the industrial coatings,
the industrial stuff's starting to pick up.
It's so hard to work in that space as it is, right, with all the certifications and the regulations. But, coming from that space, that's been one where I'm like, there's a huge, hole in what's available. And everything's OSHA regulated in that sense. So it's like, well, I know what needs to be done because I'm in that space and kind of been working.
Yeah, and then you're going to learn that people want a certain amount of liability coverage.
Right, of course.
Licensed and bonded, and here we go.
We're working on that daily,
Yeah, it's always more. And coming from the oil patch, I can tell you, because I had plenty of customers on the insurance side there in the oil patch, and they call me and go, I got to have a $10 million liability policy just to drive on the lease. It's like, yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Yep, exactly.
I'll walk.
Is it worth? Here's the premium. Is it worth the job? Because maybe we should rethink this.
Yep, exactly.
But there's a lot of opportunity, and I just think it's awesome. Now, we just finished the Home and Garden show. Did you guys go check it out, or
we were working?
Yeah, the intent was.
You're self-employed.
That's right. We had to work. We had to skip this one, but I'm sure we'll be at the fair next year.
We intended to be there. We talked to him about doing a booth, and we really wanted to be there. But it goes back to the fact that after talking to him, I'm like we're in the infancy stage of being able to do that stuff.
And one thing we did do, we've done a few jobs, he's helped me on a whole bunch of them actually. And so we have the garages down. Once we started the company, the first job we had was the 6,000 square foot airplane hangar with a pickleball court in the middle. And so all of our resources were put into this huge job that's taken us quite a long time to do.
That wasn't
right.
a 10-hour job?
This wasn't a 10-hour job. Yeah, this was more like a 10 week?
10-week job, yeah.
But, you know, we get in there, we're doing everything right. You can't take shortcuts on this stuff, you know?
And we talked about it, and that was one of the things. Like, a lot of people, like, said, why would you take a job that size to be like your first legit, you know, as a company job?
Right.
It's a good question.
And it's just you two. But I'm like, why would I quit my job after 15 years to go start something that
They're both tests.
I don't, because we're not afraid of really anything. Like,
I say, stuff
let's
that comes up, we figure it out and we make it happen, you know? And that's what's cool about this flooring stuff is, you know, if you mess something up, we take the time to correct it. You know, you could call it good, you could forget about it. No one would ever probably notice. My deal is I want it to be perfect. It's got to be perfect.
I completely
And
understand.
so we put the love into it.
It's not like pruning a tree. Once you cut
It's
that
not.
branch off, you can't put it back.
Right, exactly.
But you could kind of
So there's stuff on this, you know, we could have done it in less time, could have been done. No one would have ever known anything, but I want this stuff. It has to look perfect. This is people's property, you know? And so when we were doing this, Chad's like, dude, I don't even know what you're fixing. Like, why are you doing that?
There's things I couldn't see.
And I
he's
said,
like,
hey,
no,
you know, you're going to build, we're building this business, but we're also building our reputation through this. You know, you never know. It's an airplane hangar. You don't know who's coming in there, who's flying in on a jet. The same thing with people's garages. You never know who's going to go in there and see that. Someone's going to notice if something's not right. So, you know, we put a lot of time and effort into
and
this
I
stuff.
think everyone will notice it that walks across it or sees it.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me throw this at you. I know that I can go to Home Depot and buy epoxy. I know nothing about it. What's the difference? I mean, obviously, I think you already said it. You have the equipment, the expertise. I've always said painting's in the prep.
It really is. It
takes me 6 hours to tape the job and 2 hours to paint it.
Right, yeah. So prep is everything to make the job look right, to make it last. The product is what makes it last longer and to be more protective. So the stuff we use, it's...
Most of the garages we do came from people that had that
exactly,
same mentality.
Yeah. And you can. And
like I can just go buy it.
Yeah, the epoxy from Home Depot is fine. You know, it'll last you maybe a year or two, but the tires are hot. The tires are wet. There's oil. I mean, that product isn't built to last as long as stuff that's built to last for life.
So do you guys have an agreement with a manufacturer that you just use their epoxy, kind of like in the solar world? I'm a distributor of.
So we are actually applying for a distributorship right now.
Right.
Okay.
To be the ones in Bakersfield in this region to carry that product, to use it. Yeah.
And then I guess they would help market for you as well.
Of course.
And maybe give you some co-op dollars.
Definitely.
And Caleb's done a ton of I mean, there's so many different companies. And he's, 2:00 in the morning, I'm getting an API data sheet on specs, and I'm like, what is this?
I'm into it.
And he's like, I've been researching this for the last 5 hours, and I'm like, we've got to be on a job in like 3.
I'm like, I'm still at the job.
Yeah. And he's like, so he went through it like to the extreme, and he's like, one day he came in, he just puts the paper, he's like, this is what we use from here on out, there's nothing else. And
I won't touch anything else.
we've been stuck to this product, so far it's worked out really well.
Right.
Well, I can tell you this, it's not going to be because of lack of passion. And you're willing to do it, and I could already tell you'll be success. I know enough about you.
Exactly.
If anyone asked me, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, what is it that you would tell me? And that would be get up every day and go to work. Don't ever expect someone or, a flash in the bottle that you're just going to be wealthy someday because you got lucky.
Because you're a business owner.
Work.
Yeah.
And work's not a bad word. Work's a great word that I think is just... Sometimes in today's society, people look at work as like, oh, we don't want to work. We don't want to work. Work is so healthy.
It is.
But is it work if it's something you love?
I don't think so. When I'm on these floors, I love being there. I love doing it. And it's fun for me, So the business stuff, the stuff he's doing, not so fun for me. That's why.
Well, no, I get it. It's just like you talk about me. It's like I love what I do, and people go, "You're an insurance guy,
right?
How could you love insurance?"
Yeah.
No. I love troubleshooting. I love working with a customer that has a lot of issues that I can resolve and give him strategic ideas of how to fix this scenario and become his advisor.
Exactly. Right. I love the challenge like this hangar. The pickleball court, we had there's a lot of measuring involved. There's a lot of...
Oh, yeah, especially if they want the pickleball in the middle.
Exactly.
And the thing's not real square, because nothing's square.
Nothing. Zero. Nothing. We figured that out, but,
Nothing's level, nothing's square.
So I'm sitting there measuring stuff, and, it's good. Let's keep going. Well, let's measure it again. It takes time, but I love that, having to figure out how to do it. I love the challenge. The challenge is awesome.
I'm not gonna lie, there hasn't been like a job we've been on where I haven't looked at him and he just looks at me. He's like, "Don't you love this? Don't you just love this?" And I'm looking at him. I'm like, I love it as like I love that you love this, and I love that we're doing it on our own.
Right,
and it just comes down to that.
And then you see the finished product. I'm like, dude, see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you know. And he's okay. I get it.
So you guys are up and coming. Web page is about ready to be fired up.
We'll be
we got
launching
an
that pretty
Instagram,
soon.
and that's been firing.
Yeah, HB
Epoxy.
Yeah, HB Epoxy on Instagram.
That's got some of our work on there. The web page is being built right now, and we got a few.
And
We have some shirts coming,
some
hats coming. Yeah.
There you go.
Slowly but surely.
It sounds like fun. Let's I'm going to get a little personal with you two. This is what we call our rapid fire section. So I'll ask you individually here. Caleb, we'll start with you. So tell me something that no one knows about you.
Well, if I tell you, everyone will know about it. So I'm going to pass on that one. No.
There could be a few people that know.
So what's funny is, when I was working and stuff, when I wasn't doing this at work, I was always, everyone knows everything about me. I talk about everything. So I'm trying to think of.
You're pretty open book.
There's stuff that a few people know about me. I could blow bubbles off my tongue. I don't know if that's a talent, a hidden talent, or if that's.
Well, I can't, so that's better.
There you go.
There
we go.
How about you?
Somebody nobody knows about me?
Yeah, I'm sure somebody knows,
I
but
think,
most people don't.
I think most people, like, when they meet me, I try to come off like, not come off confident, but just like, I'm very self-aware, and I try to, with all the jobs that we do, I think I try to come off like we've got everything. Like we can, like when we started getting into these big projects, I'd be out there and I'm like, and I throw everything like, there's no big deal, 100%. Sometimes I get in the truck and I'm like, that's a task right there, you know what I mean? So I feel like sometimes when I meet people, I kind of like shield some of that internal like fear. I try to come off like strong and confident, and then sometimes I'm like, maybe that one's a big one to bite off right there. Like, can we do?
But Chad, you've been in sales, and you got to be a chameleon. You got to change.
And that's
I've always said when I was in oil patch,
the biggest thing in sales, right?
I always said, be like, dress like, and act like your customers.
Right.
Don't go out there in a $180,000 BMW and ask them to buy filters from you.
Right.
Because they're going to look out the door and go, I don't think so.
Right.
But I'll go out there in my Chevy truck like everyone else, my cowboy boots and jeans.
Right. Exactly.
And say, hey, what are you guys doing for filters, and build some rapport.
Right.
And say, hey, why don't you try one of mine, and if it works out, could we put something to,
But that's an important that's an important like part of the whole thing is that, in sales, when you work for these big companies and you have the resources, you have the financing, and you are a chameleon, right? Of all the classes I've been to in business and sales, I asked one of the instructors, the last class I went to was like, you have your expressive, you're amiable, you're analytical, your driver, you have all these personalities, but like what one tends to be the CEO? Like what do CEOs in general tend to be? There's got to be data analytics on this. And he said, there's not any one thing that a CEO tends to be, but their versatility rating is off the charts. And that's the only thing that separates them. So for me, starting a business with Caleb, being that entrepreneur, versatility is great because it makes a good first impression, says, hey, we can do this. But I've learned too, it's okay to say, hey, this might be a little bit bigger than we can shoot right now. So don't be so focused on just trying to make the sale or just trying to go get it. Like, let's be realistic and say like, hey, that might be bigger than our britches right now.
Right.
But we want to come back. Like we aspire to, to be able to help you out. And I think that's important.
I think it's absolutely important saying either you don't know how to do the job or you're not big enough or capable to do the job, possibly refer it out. I mean, I just referred a client the other day out of this office right here, and he says, you're telling me that you wouldn't buy what you're trying to sell me? And I said, I wouldn't buy it. He goes, why wouldn't you buy it? I go, it doesn't make financial sense.
Right.
But I know a guy that might have something better that I have no access to. Call this guy, and he knew him. And I said, ask him for a quote and see what it looks like. And maybe his is better. And if it's a lot better, then I might buy it. And you can run it by me. But financially, I'm telling you as a friend, I don't need your business. It's not going to make or break me. But I do need your referrals and your friendship forever. So I'm going to tell you what's right because it will all come back. And it's rewarding. And but it doesn't happen when you first start off. You want to get everything. Right. You want to grow as fast as you can. And sometimes that's not real good.
Right.
Share some advice that you've gotten that you will never forget.
So one thing when we went into this.
Is this from your wife?
No.
Okay.
He doesn't.
She's got a lot of good advice, and I'll be honest, like I give everything to her because she's helped me out quite a bit through this.
She doesn't give him advice though. She tells him what to do.
Yeah, well, and I'm smart because I listen. One thing somebody told me, an entrepreneur here in town started his own business, had mentioned like, hey, when you do this, just understand that everything costs more than you think and takes longer than you expect. And going through our first couple of jobs that we were doing, and we were like, oh, this is going to be this long, it's going to cost this much. And then you start adding in
gas, food.
Just like so many other things, unexpected costs, right? These variable costs that just kick in. You know, we're dealing with weather, right? So, we show up to location, we're like, hey, we're going to go put on a second coat. We look at it and we're like, well, it's not ready because it's too cold outside. So now it's taking longer. That expectation that everything's going to go perfectly as planned, coming into this business, that was the best advice that I got, was always expect it's going to take longer than you think and it's going to cost more than you expect. And that's helped out quite a bit.
Well, especially right now, materials and things are just through the roof. Get fuel.
Yeah, supply chain's been a pain in the butt.
But yeah, breakdowns, you just don't plan on it. It's like, man, I didn't know the belt was going to break on that grinder.
Right, exactly. Now you got to go buy, new teeth for it, a new belt for it, So.
Or I didn't know Caleb was going to call in sick today, and now I'm all alone.
Yeah. So out on that airplane hangar, we both worked through some pretty bad illnesses, so.
There was, I think, a 24-hour shift out there.
There was a couple 24-hour shifts. Really
How about you, Caleb?
Just to take things slow. My older brother, he's a painting contractor here in town. And so he's given us a lot of advice. And he's been, a huge influence for us. He's actually, partnered with us. But he said, you guys got to take it slow. Don't go to someone's house and say, okay, it's going to be this much right there on the spot without even breaking things down like we were talking about. Go home, write it out, think of your costs, put it together, and then give a bid, instead of just... taking the measurements, giving the cost per square foot, and that's it. It changes. So take things slow. Make sure it's right before you proceed.
Yeah, be observant.
Exactly.
There's a lot of hidden things.
There's like a lot.
Well, I didn't open that door. I didn't realize.
I didn't know there was a closet.
The plumbing behind that door was leaking, and here we go.
Right.
So, wow, guys, I've learned a lot, and I can tell you right now, I'm excited for you.
We're super excited. Yeah, thank you.
I feel that anybody that has passion will always succeed. It may not be exactly what your business model is today, but I believe a business plan is a living document. Mm-hmm. And in anything, you modify, you grow. There's directions that you might flip a U-turn and come back and go. That's not really our focus. And who knows where you'll be? But I can tell you both have power as a team, and you're going to find success. And I'm sure it will be in the epoxy flooring business. And I've learned a lot, and I know you've shared a lot today with our listeners. And we're going to put all of our show notes out there in your web pages, and
appreciate it.
And hope we get some attention to you. But so we have Chad Horton and Caleb Bolton with HB Epoxy. Thank you, guys.
Yes,
appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
This show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burton with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen Real Estate Lender, Broker and Investor, and Shannon Eckroth with the Eckroth Sales and Marketing Agency, LLC. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or catch us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe